Yes, I hope my voice isn't echoing too much.
I'm taking a video just so everyone can see how you're frozen. It looks like one of those pictures on like a missing persons poster.
Oh, it's very flattering light.
Welcome to the 22nd episode of the Animal Riot podcast, brought to you by Animal Riot Press, a literary press for books that matter. I'm your host, Brian Birnbaum. Just to let you know, if you're new to the Animal Riot community, welcome, and you can find out more about us at animalriotpress.com. And just to let you know that we are re-recording this episode because of legal troubles, I'll call it. But while we're sad to see that one go, we're happy to bring on our guest, Joy Parisi, who runs Paragraph Workspace, a workspace for writers. And there's two locations in Brooklyn and Manhattan. So we'll be talking a lot about that so you can learn more. And Aaron Puchigian, who we've had on the podcast before on this episode that we're redoing right now. He's the author and translator of several titles, including the novel in verse Mr. Either Or, which was phenomenal. And he's now writing the sequel, right, Aaron?
Yes, I am.
Yes, you are. Okay, so let's get started. We're here to talk about. We'll talk about Aaron's writing too. I'm sure we'll get there, as we always do. But we're gonna start off with Paragraph, because that's what we did on the first episode that we aired. It was actually a round table at Paragraph with all the members there. Well, not every member that belongs, but it was really cool. So we're sad to see that one go. But yeah, we're giving you another chance, Joy, to put your message out into the world and reach our 80 million podcast listeners.
Excellent.
More or less. Yeah.
To make amends for the first time.
Yes. Make amends. Right.
Well, thanks for having me again. I'm sad to see the first episode go as well, or the last one, but happy to reconnect with you guys and do it again. So should I talk about Paragraph?
Yeah. So yeah, that's the first thing I had. I was saying we should go into like however you want to do it, but a little look into the history, like how you started it. Sure. and what it's about, all that stuff.
Okay, so about a little over 15 years ago, amazingly, I was in grad school with my then business partner, Lila Cecil. And, co-working wasn't much of a thing back then. There was a handful of co-working spaces. No one really knew what that meant. And, we loved the community we found. We were both at the new school. We were both getting our MFAs. For the first time, we'd always been writers, but we really felt like we were writers because we were among a community of writers. And, we had this, I wouldn't say fear, but this sort of like, okay, what happens after grad school? How do we keep this going? How do we we keep the community that we love and everything we love about grad school in our lives? So there was some selfishness to it. Lila was working at the Brooklyn Writer Space at the time. So there was that co-working space. And she loved it. So we had an idea to start our own. We thought it was, really useful. Where do writers write in the city? They sneak in spots in coffee shops and, and where do they find community? So we started building the idea in grad school together. And when we graduated, we looked at lots of spaces in the city. We found our location on 14th Street after a long search, and kind of threw some of our own personal money into it and hope for the best. And we got really lucky in that we got featured in the New York Times right like the month after our opening. And, had that not happened, I don't know that I'd be here talking about the origins of Paragraph 15 years ago, honestly, because we didn't necessarily know what we were doing. We had sort of a hope and a dream and an idea, and a business plan. But had we not got that press from the Times, which is so powerful, really spread the word like wildfire, and then we kind of grew and were able to sustain ourselves, it might be a different story right now. So in 15 years, I'm really grateful for so many writers have come through our doors, so many books, so many publications, so many things have been written there at the space. So I feel very personally fortunate to have Paragraph. to contribute in that way to the literary community in the city, and the community around the space is really the what makes the space, which is odd to talk about now because we're in COVID, and our community is sort of dispersed. But that has really been the magic in the 15 years, is just the people and the writers, and the connections that have been made in the space and all the writing that's come out of it. So that is like, the big story. I don't know if you want to, delve anywhere else.
Well, yeah, it's funny you brought up COVID. A couple things actually. We're definitely going to touch on that, but I had a really, I guess I'll phrase it as like a moment of narcissistic serendipity, because you mentioned the piece in the New York Times that spread the word about Paragraph, and we have as you know, we have Anthropica coming out, our second
Mhm.
title by David Hollander, and
Mhm.
we have a book review coming out in the LA Times review of books. So I'm
Phenomenal.
hoping that that statement you just made is an omen, a good omen.
I hope so too. I mean, it's powerful. The LA Times is a powerful publication. I had no idea of the power of newsprint until that happened for us. Really.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah, and it'll be interesting to see if that power still remains, because back then, even at the turn of the century, it
yeah,
was, people were still getting papers delivered to their door,
yeah,
and
yeah.
yeah, I don't, yeah, I actually did that for a while, and I cut it off because it was like, why am I paying $20 for this when I can read it online for $1? But
I did too, but there was something, I'm like, I'm not going to be able to have this paper delivered to my door, forever. So there was some nostalgia to it, but I too cut it off because I was just putting it in the waste bin every week.
yeah, yeah. But yeah, so we'll see. Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about why you started Paragraph.
Yeah.
Was it your business partner? Was it more her? Was it more you? Like how did it come about?
There was some selfishness to it. We like I said, we both wanted a community. We both wanted a space to write. We She was bartending before grad school. I was working in tech. I mean, we didn't really want to go back to that lifestyle. So we wanted to write first. We wanted to make our lives around writing. So, starting the business was a little bit selfish in that this would help us shape our own lives around writing. But that wasn't all of it. We both. It was sort of both of us. It's not I won't say perfect storm, but, when these things happen, everything sort of aligns, right? And everything aligned. We both had some starter money in our bank accounts happen to at that time. We both were met in grad school. We are both finishing up grad school. It was her idea, but our skill set really complemented each other. She was really more of the marketing and the outreach and the networking. She was really good at that, and I was sort of the sit and run numbers and crunch spreadsheets and write business plans, and so everything just aligned. And then we found the right space, which took a while too. And even when we found the space, we found these contractors at Build It Green, which was this great reuse store. It was in Queens. I think now it's in Brooklyn. We met the guy, the cashier, and he said, "Oh, I'll do renovations." And this guy Max, and he was a writer and a musician too, I think. And he did our renovation at a great cost. So everything was just lining up for us. And we both just loved the idea because there's a practical side to writing, and that writers need a space to go and write, and need a place to quiet their brain and let words kind of come out. And I was really happy to offer that. Funny enough, when you run the business for that, you don't really get it for yourself. So even though I said there was some selfishness to starting the business, I would say Paragraph is probably more of a haven for the writers that come in than it is for the people running it. But so everything aligned, and the idea was just. I don't know. I still really love the concept. Really simple, just a quiet place to write. But really necessary to the writing process.
Yeah, it's funny you touched on one of the things I was going to ask next was was it more of a lifestyle choice, or like was it more of like, were you guys really motivated by the business aspect? Did you think you could turn a big profit? And it seems like you kind of answered that. It was like you guys both had these career paths that weren't allowing a lot of time to immerse yourselves into the community, at least, if not,
Yeah,
I'm not sure if Paragraph has allowed you to write any more than your past career, because it probably takes a lot of time as well.
yeah,
But at the same time, like, if you love what you're doing more and it doesn't feel like it's like taking energy and, the soul sucking 9 to 5. Like when you get
Yes,
home and you have 7 hours until you go to sleep, there's a reason a lot of people don't write, it's
yes.
like they just feel dead. I'm interested in one detail, and I hope our listeners are interested as well. But so you guys rented a space in Manhattan, and like at the time, did you guys get a deal or something? And I'm also interested in the fact that you renovated this place, and I mean, you had to get like permission from the landlord or something, right? Or someone who owned the space.
Yeah, that's a whole other story. And then did we? I'll just go back. We never thought it was going to be super profitable. Our hope was it could maybe sustain us. However, but we also thought, if it breaks even, great. We could always get jobs too. But yeah, it was never. I don't think a writing space. I don't know if anyone starts a writing space for the
Yeah,
profitability
yeah.
of it. But
Yeah, and that's why I asked.
yeah,
I was pretty sure of the answer, but I think a lot of people out there are really afraid to make choices based on what makes them feel better than
yeah.
like what they're supposed to do or what's gonna like get them ahead in a way that they've always presupposed.
I mean, I
Um,
was working in tech, and I was at Chase Bank, and I was making a lot of money, and
yeah,
it wasn't a hard job, and I liked the people I was working with, but a lot of people just didn't like the job but stay there for health insurance, which I totally respect. People have
yep,
families.
yep,
But I was young at the time, and I didn't want to make that choice in my life. I wanted to sort of do what I loved and felt passionate about, and then if I was able to make a small living, great. If not, I can go back and do the other job that I didn't wasn't crazy about again. So
yeah. And what
luckily,
did you say you were? What was the position you said you were at
I was
Intech?
I was I was a project manager for interactive projects, and I was contracting at Chase Bank for a while. That was really good money, and
Uh huh.
different design agencies. There were things I loved about that job. I liked working with creatives. I liked working in tech.
Yeah,
But yeah, definitely, it's a 9 to 5 or a 10 to 8 job,
yeah.
and doesn't leave a lot left over for creativity.
Yeah, yeah.
But
I mean, so would it be accurate to say that had you stayed, you might be working on blockchain right now?
that's a possibility. It's a possibility.
Yeah.
Uh,
Well, yeah, no, I mean, I commend you. I've made that choice before and like and in a way like I'm in that position again where, like when I was in my young 20s, I moved out to Seattle with our other business partner John Kay. And really the only reason was to find some shitty job and to be able to write, And
yep.
that's how I ended up becoming a graveyard shift concierge
Yeah.
at the apartment complex at which we were living. But anyway, so yeah, so that's what I thought. I mean, like that was I expected that answer. That's why I had the
Yeah.
question listed.
I mean, it's
Um,
like this. It sounds like you kind of came to a similar thing where in my life I was working first and writing when I could. And I was like, I want to turn that on its head. And that was part of going to grad school. I want to write first and then work
yeah,
second,
exactly. Yeah,
that's a privileged choice to be able to make. I completely understand that. But, I'm grateful. I'm grateful.
yeah. I think it's privileged. I also think like I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like that's like half a knee jerk response because I also think you just have to ask yourself, what are
Yeah.
you happy with? Like, what do you need to be happy? And if you don't need a big house and like lots
Yep.
of stuff and like whatever, then you can make that choice. If it like,
Certainly.
it's really like a lifestyle choice. And like, obviously, the starter money allowed you to do it. There's
Yes.
a big element of privilege,
Yes.
but yeah, I mean, you have to be happy living like a somewhat Spartan existence, um,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
comparatively.
Yes.
Yeah,
But you asked about the construction. If you that was you know what? The rents in Manhattan 15 years ago were, maybe COVID is going to push them back to where they were 15 years ago,
yeah,
but
yeah,
it was possible then. We got a large space, and Manhattan commercial real estate is complicated. I don't know if you want to go down that rabbit hole, but you pay price per square
kind
foot.
of, sure.
Our price per square foot was reasonable, and we weren't paying. In Manhattan, you pay if you have a 2,000 square foot space, they call it 2,500 because you pay on space that's not there. That's just how it is. They call it loss.
Wow. Yeah.
Our space, we had 0% loss. I mean, that was unheard of. They did since adjust that, 5 or 10 years in. At one
Uh-huh.
point, 10 years in, our rent doubled, and that's when Lila was like, "Okay, I'm done." And we had a friendly parting, and I stayed on. But the rent made the business almost impossible.
So
Like with
was her parting also, did that make it possible to continue?
yes, absolutely, because
Yeah.
it could barely sustain two business partners, and when the rent doubled, well,
Yeah.
that would have she was ready to go anyway, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. That was the
But
excuse.
rent in Manhattan is made, it's really squeezed small businesses, especially small businesses for the arts. I read a piece by Gabriel Hamilton early on in COVID. She runs Prune. She was a member of our space for a while. She talked about the razor thin margins of a really successful restaurant because of the rent. And
Yeah.
I completely understand that. Rent is, yeah, I don't, had COVID not happened, it was like, how do we keep going?
Yeah.
How does small business keep going? And COVID is still a big question mark. What's going to happen with rents? I don't know that this is solving anything, but part of me is a little happy for the disruption, not for the health part of it. This is just for the way rents were going in the city. Something had to sort of turn it upside down a little bit.
Yeah, I can only imagine. I always saw New York as on the trajectory towards just like a hyper wealthy city.
Yes.
Um, and I don't know if COVID will. I honestly am personally very dubious. People are saying things about how like COVID's going to change everything forever, and I'm very skeptical. I think people are short sighted, but
I'm with you. I mean, it's still to
yeah.
be seen.
Yeah, we'll see. So I mean, we'll jump into that for a second,
Yes.
but uh, in
Oh,
a
but the
second, I just want to. Yeah,
oh,
go
sorry.
ahead.
Oh, the construction was really easy because our landlord was, we were a tiny building. We honestly, I don't know if I should say this on the podcast, but we didn't get permits, for our work. We
Yeah,
really just did interior construction. We did everything under the radar. Our landlord was really hands off. Um, and it was like, a mom and pop renovation, literally us sketching on paper how we wanted everything to be laid out.
wow.
And Max, our awesome general contractor, just like carrying all of his supplies up 3 long flights of stairs and getting it
Uh-huh.
done.
Wait, so did you guys just do it under the landlord's nose? Did they even know?
Kind of, yeah. I mean, they knew we were renovating, but certain landlords in the city just sort of they're hands off, and that's a great thing when you're renovating. That's not such a great thing when you have leaks coming through your ceiling. So
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Yeah.
there's pluses and minuses to that. Commercial leases in Manhattan, it's like owning without any benefits of owning. So
Yeah, right, right. Man, that's crazy. Yeah, so yeah, I mean, let's talk about a little bit what it's been like with COVID. And Aaron, maybe you can jump in here too and see because we can get a user review to put it in a tech sense. But yeah, also, like, I want to go back to what you were saying. One of the reasons you started Paragraph was, and one of the reasons we started Animal Riot is because of community. And, obviously that's been threatened by COVID. But at the same time, it's always been curious to me that it almost seems like communities in a way become a crutch for the literary community. And this is kind of the first time I've brought this up. It might be blasphemy, but I do see it as like it's kind of a symptom of like the need for like indie presses and stuff. It's in the same vein. Like big five is not gonna cater to the sort of fiction that we all know and love as much as they did in the past. And in that same way, like we've kind of had to band together, and
yeah,
create our own communities and start our own presses and stuff like that. And I feel like this has made it even harder. Like how COVID has basically made the big five tech companies or whatever you want to call it, the big seven, I mean, it's, it varies depending on who you ask, but there's basically 5 or 6 companies that are like 20% of the biggest 500 companies, public companies in the world.
mhm,
And COVID has made them even stronger. And I feel like it's kind of the same in terms for literature. It's like it's really difficult for us now, and we really have to start taking. We're really trying to figure out what we can do digitally, obviously. And you were running Paragraph digitally as well. for a while, and it means like being really involved in social media, like really reaching out in any way we can without being able to really step out of our house. So yeah, I mean, you can talk about and Aaron, we can start with you if you want, whatever works. I don't know, maybe Joy, it's easier for you to just say what was going on and how you like because I remember you said you were kind of close to maybe you're not sure if you can continue. Yeah, I don't know. I'll stop rambling and let you take
Yeah,
over.
no, that's yeah. So you're right. Like communities, the life bread. There's a lot there. Yeah, and like every day it's like a question. So has it, has it made us stronger or has it hurt us or is it both? And I feel like COVID is a lot of question marks, not and a lot of kind of not answers. I think the need for community became really obvious when we all were sort of locked in our homes,
Yeah,
and the want and the desire, and then also kind of running up against how to do it digitally because it's just not as satisfying as sitting in person in the Paragraph kitchen and sort of just being running into writers and printing out your book and just sort of having a conversation.
yeah,
I
yeah,
how do you translate that? And because that's really what feels good, right? Is just sort of being in proximity to other writers. So we did try, and I would love to hear Aaron's take on how we did because it's like working in a dark room, and that's how I've felt, and almost still feel, right? Because you're not getting feedback from faces from people coming into the space. You're getting some emails. I'm not saying you're not getting any feedback, but so, when Paragraph closed its doors for COVID in March, thereafter I was like, what's going to happen? And I launched our community online via Slack, just because I'm not great at Facebook. I don't know why. Um,
uh-huh, uh-huh.
but I
No, that's
just
okay. Slack, I'm pro Slack because they're like
yeah.
the little guy that Microsoft is trying to wipe out,
Well, are they
and
really?
their CEO Butterfield is like a genius. So
I think Slack is great. I
yeah,
think
yeah.
maybe
It's
it's more
the one that you're a tech person, and Slack
yeah,
is the one that all the tech people use, like the engineers use, because it's
yeah.
like they understand all of its features. But anyway, I'm continue.
No, I know, and it's funny because I think it's befuddled our community a little bit. Everyone feels like, "Oh, Slack,"
Yeah.
and I think,
Yep.
"Oh, it's so easy to use." So I
Uh-huh.
think, so we chose Slack. Let's, open a new channel, and it's free, and we thought the more the better, right? So let's use this as an opportunity to expand our community beyond the bounds of Manhattan and Brooklyn, beyond New York City.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
and because a lot of people in New York and New Jersey, at least for the summer months, fled, so our community wasn't there, and that's sort of been really inspiring. I mean, we have people in Brazil, Spain, Australia, we have such a far reach now that feels great to me. I don't know that I've been able to figure out a way to really engage our community on Slack in a way that is really, I think it's great to know that we're all there. We have like probably almost 400 writers on our Slack community now, which I'm happy about.
Wow. Wow.
But are they actively engaging? Not really. And it's still sort of
Yeah.
like always trying to figure it out. Like how do you spark that?
Is it kind of like coming up with the next event or something like that? You got to keep them engaged, or
Yeah,
what is it?
yeah, I mean, yeah, it probably is. And then as the owner of Paragraph, I'm sort of having my own. I'm experiencing this like sort of burnout of like of not having the things that make me really love running Paragraph.
Yeah, yeah.
So I'm trying to always like find the motivation within to kind of keep going, and wondering like what does the community need, what's worthwhile, also doing some self-care in a stressful time. So
Uh-huh.
a lot of juggling and balance, and then we did launch online memberships and a lot of events. So the online events have been pretty great. We just basically took all the events we were doing before, at our space, agent roundtables, pitch wars, where people pitch books. Brian, you were a host with us on that.
Uh-huh. Yeah, that was great. That was a lot of fun.
And yeah, it was a lot of fun. So we basically just took all our events and we made them virtual on Zoom. And that's been working. I think it's great. Then and craft talks. We went to craft talks. We're going to do some lectures in the fall. always, in a way it's similar. Like when I was running the space, what does the community need, and making that event happen. Now we can have a much broader reach for that. That it feels great to be on a Zoom with during the thing. But then again, we're all still virtual. So I did reopen the spaces in July because we were allowed, and maybe this is where I love Aaron's take on, like, so Paragraph law, we um, converted to online memberships, Slack. We opened the Slack channel. We really tried to bring the community online, and keep us together, and broaden it. We reopened the spaces in July, mid-July, soft opening, because we're really trying to make sure it's COVID safe, and we don't really want a lot of people using the space. That makes it safer, and still keeping all of the online stuff going. So that's sort of what I've been doing. Is it sustainable through COVID? I don't know. It's always a question mark. It's always will the landlords be that forgiving for rent, because the income is certainly pretty much decimated from the business. There's still bills to pay, so it's just like making ends meet. But I still love it. I still have a passion for it. I still think it's really necessary, and just always trying to navigate through new uncharted territory. But yeah, I'd love to hear Aaron's take on what that's like my end of doing it. I don't know what his is.
Yeah, that was going to be my we were going to turn to Aaron now, so perfect timing. Basically I'd like to hear Aaron. Well, first of all, I do want to note that if the tech stuff, or, like, the digital bridge, if it can act like a bridge, at least you've been able to do that, because I definitely think there's a lot of people out there, including me for sure, that don't even know how to, like, have someone come up as if they're the next on the mic,
Yeah,
in Zoom or, like, Slack, to,
yeah.
like, give their pitch. So anyway, so yeah, so at least you have that. And now you have one space open. I'm correct,
So
right?
I
In
have both
Manhattan.
Brooklyn
Oh
and
yeah,
Manhattan
both.
open. Yep, yep.
Okay, yeah. So you're back on your feet. That's great. And so obviously it's about getting us all vaccinated and in the same room.
Yes.
Um,
I do believe
so
if we do come to the other end of this, where we feel safe being in person, I think the spaces will be stronger than ever,
yeah,
because
yeah, yeah.
we
That's
feel
true.
that
Because
we
and
feel.
yeah, I think people are really hungry to get out there. I really
Yeah,
do.
yeah.
So Aaron, yeah, let's talk about how
I
you
will.
found Paragraph.
Yeah, I'm excited. If you will allow me, I will be optimistic. I'm excited about the Paragraph brand for the future. If only that before COVID, it was limited mostly to physical locations, to the Brooklyn location, to the Manhattan location, and then there's one in California as well. And after COVID, then everything went online, and Paragraph Slack has expanded Paragraph, I think, to a national and even international level. And so when finally we are all vaccinated and we can fill all the desks again, Paragraph will be back as it was before, but there'll be this enhanced online component, this enhanced virtual community that, yes, it didn't have before. And so I'm confident, yes, that Joy, that Paragraph will come back even stronger, probably early next year. When I first arrived in New York, I was teaching at Brooklyn College, and I lived way, way down deep in Brooklyn. And I had a small apartment, and I was very lonely. And so I was searching for workspaces online, and Paragraph was the first to pop up. And I must say, when I did become a member there, yeah, it improved my life. Suddenly, when I moved to New York, I knew nobody. But suddenly, I had something like a social life. I had events to go to. There used to be, and there may be again, Friday night happy hours at Spain nearby. Um, and so I have very fond memories of, yeah, the first time I was a member, and then I left the city briefly, and
Hmm.
now I'm a member again. Um, I must say, yeah, that as a full time writer, somebody who tries to write 8 hours a day. And some days I can do it, and some days I can't. I need a place like Paragraph because I go crazy writing at home. I feel lazy writing at home. It just and so it's nice. I feel more respectable having a kind of office space to which I can go and do my work. It makes me feel more legitimate as a writer, if you will. Yes.
Does it affect the writing? Yeah, does it affect the writing, or is it just your mood towards what you're doing, like as like your self-esteem as a person?
Both. Here at Paragraph, I mean, I'm grateful for those times when inspiration hits and the poems just write themselves. But to be honest, that's pretty rare. Most of my best work has come from just grinding and grinding and grinding away and revising and revising. And this ethic, at least my work ethic at Paragraph, lends itself to that process of slow revision, slow improvement, and then once in a while a breakthrough until you reach the final piece, the final draft. And so I feel I wouldn't be able to do that at home, in that I would just be distracted by so many different things. And I don't have the desk for it. I don't have the office-like atmosphere for it. And so Paragraph has improved my writing in that it lends itself to the diligence that's necessary to being a writer, to being a full-time writer devoted to one's trade.
Yeah, that's really true. I couldn't agree with you more about the stuff that comes out of your pen and seems to just flow as if it has a mind of its own. Like, it does not end up being the best work.
Yeah.
So that's a really interesting point. So wow, I would say that's a 5-star review.
Thank you, Eric. That was unfair.
Yeah. I'm not gonna lie. I'm just hearing of this. I did not know there's a Paragraph LA.
Oh, so there is I would say a sister space called the Hatchery, which I'll give a shout out to. So we do collab. We if you join Paragraph and you're in LA, you can use that space because of our
and vice versa.
Yes, exactly.
Wow, that's a very good idea. Interesting. Who runs the Hatchery?
Her name is Talia Block, I believe, and my memory's shot. So maybe I'm getting her last name wrong. Oh my goodness. No,
that's really interesting. That's a really good idea. We did something similar with another press, SFK Press, in terms of just like affiliate, and buying books and stuff like that. It's just another way to connect communities. It's really cool.
Talia Bolnick. I'm sorry, I botched her last name. Talia
there you go.
Yeah, with there's a Chicago space and a Toronto space, and we have reciprocal memberships with those spaces as well. I mean, we're all small little businesses for writers, so the more we can band together, the better. And but yeah, the Hatchery's been great, and Talia and I have been talking a lot through COVID, and just our experience of what to do next.
Yeah. It will be very interesting to see what happens moving forward. So one, a little bit of a tangent, but one thing I believe we talked about on the original Roundtable podcast episode, I believe we talked about the craziest thing that's ever happened at Paragraph. I'm not sure, and now I can't even recall it anyway. So I think we should talk about it again. And I faintly recall it being a good story. So.
Now I'm trying to remember what I revealed, because there's been. Did it have to do with drug use?
I'm not sure, but that's a good place to start.
I'm like, do I share this story? Because that's the one that kept on.
What was it, Katie?
Oh, there's that too.
Yeah. Well, let's do both. Because now I'm really interested in the one with drug use.
Okay. I know. I'm like, should I reveal this? It wasn't dangerous. It was a very long time ago. I'm not going to out anyone. Very nice.
Let's just call them Brian.
Okay, Brian was using the space, and we suspected some drug use in the bathroom. I don't know why. The nice thing about Paragraph is the community is tight. So when something is happening, I can combine the story. When there was a time when someone was sleeping at the space, we'll hear about it. People will We don't have cameras. We're not like checking footage. Our community is like, oh, I was here at 5 a.m. I just got into work and somebody was sleeping on the couch.
Yeah,
Or
yeah,
someone's been in the bathroom for, 15-minute stints for like, every hour.
every hour. Yeah, yeah.
Something's going
Well,
on in there.
if I may interject for a moment, I just want to let our listeners know, like, for Paragraph, it's like that's how comfortable a place it is.
Yeah.
That someone could live
Yes,
there.
yes, absolutely. But our community makes us safe, right? Because our community, we really ask people to tell us what's going on because we're open 24/7. We're not there 24/7.
Right, right, of course.
And most people are not. It's really just a in case you need it, in case you're on deadline, you really need it for the night. So we just suspect somebody was using drugs in the bathroom, which is not allowed in the space. And what we do with any smaller, large problems, we usually say, well, we say, hey, can you come into the office so we can talk to you? And we just have a face-to-face conversation and to see what's going on. And this person was very forthcoming about, Brian was having problems
Yeah.
um, and he had a prescription for this medication, but the medication wasn't working for him. So I think he was crushing and snorting it.
Okay. Sounds like Adderall.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it might have been stronger than that, but, he gave us his doctor's number to call. I think when you talk to people one-on-one, as writers, it's never just like this one. It's always like a more complicated story, right? Like there's always like a human element to it. So he really was struggling and the medication wasn't helping him. So he felt like he needed to crush and snort it. We talked to his doctor. That really was an acceptable way to ingest this medication. The doctor wasn't aware of it. And we parted ways, friendly terms, but we couldn't have that at the space. So that's probably one of the crazier stories. But
what? Yeah, the most interesting aspect of that was like that this person that Brian was so as you said, so forthcoming.
Yeah.
And that's really intriguing to me. It's like you would have thought that he would have just lied or something, and said, "Oh, like no, at least like, oh no, I'll stop," or something like, and then just like tried to hide it. But they were just like, "Oh yeah, okay." Like you shake hands and say, "Yo, I can't snort drugs in your plate. That's fine. I'll go."
Right.
That's intriguing to me.
Yes, exactly. But that was really touching to me too. That
yeah,
you treat people are people, and we all have problems. But I think he also understood
right.
like we couldn't continue doing that. But didn't really hear back from him. But it wasn't a difficult parting, surprisingly. And the person that was sleeping there, I think that I don't remember how that one ended. I'm sure we confronted that person as well. We can call that person Brian if we like.
Yeah.
That other Brian who was sleeping on the couch had probably paying a membership to New York Sports Club to shower and then sleeping on our couch, which is a great deal in the city,
Yeah, it is. It is.
We did let a homeless person in once, which that's probably a controversial topic. Person didn't have an address and somehow they became a member. I think he was a poet, there's a fine line between quirky and not having a place to shower, but
right.
It's like my heart bleeds for people with the circumstance in the city. It can happen to anyone. At the same time, it's not really appropriate to have a membership of Paragraph if you don't have a home. So
yeah, it's not a shelter. It's just
no, we're not a shelter. As much as like I want to help people. Paragraph can't be that place. So, there's a couple of crazy things. I hope that covered it.
Yeah, and no, it's really tough because you want to help the person, but it's not about being stingy or something. It's just safety and thinking about the other people there, and it's a really tough situation.
Yeah, I think even that story, people are, it's like, well, we had to protect the community. Is that a controversial? Like homeless people aren't inherently dangerous, right?
Yeah, right.
So then again, we're not a shelter, so
yeah,
it's a different space.
Yeah, it's tough. Yeah, that's really that first story. I'm glad you brought that one up. That's very interesting.
Okay.
Aaron, I have a quick question for you. How many books that you've published have you at least worked on at Paragraph? I want to let the kid. This is kind of like when Kevin Durant lets all the kids know when he's at the school that they can be an NBA star as well, if they just grow 2 more feet.
Let's see. One, I wrote the verse novel
Wow.
there, Mr. Either Or. I wrote much of my second book of poetry, Manhattanite, at Paragraph. I wrote much of my third book of poetry, American Divine, at Paragraph. I translated all of Apollonius's Jason and the Argonauts there.
Wow.
And now, this is kind of ridiculous, but I have 4 books coming out next year, and those were all worked on at Paragraph. And so lots of those are translations, and one is a new book of poetry. And so I would say seven, 2 of my own, and no, 3 of my own and 4 translations. Yes, yes. And I won't mention all the crazy things I know that have happened at Paragraph because Joy's on the line. But I will say that I did sleep over once one night during Hurricane Sandy, because I was living in Chinatown and the lower Manhattan was flooding and the power was out. And so I said,
That's
screw
totally
it.
possible,
I
Aaron.
didn't sleep much.
Totally possible.
I mostly listened to rain
Oh
in the
man.
skylight.
Wow.
Yeah,
We
actually,
have
maybe Aaron should tell the crazy stories. He probably knows more than I do.
yeah. Aaron, do you know any other crazy stories about Paragraph?
I do, but I'm not going to reveal them. I will say that I was very sympathetic. Also, I agree with Joy. I was very sympathetic with the homeless woman who must have been about a year and a half ago.
Right.
Ended
Brian.
up spending the night, and before it was realized, yeah, it became clear that she was homeless. But she was remarkable, and then, as I recall, talking to the administrative assistant in the office, that she had references and phone numbers. It was a very thorough
That's
effort.
right. I remember this. Yes.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so, yes, one should not feel bad about being taken in by her. And she was very pleasant.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we should talk a bit more. I mean, if we can, about the new online events that are taking place at
At
I've noticed.
Paragraph. Yeah. That sounds
Paragraph.
great.
For example, there's a great poet, Diana Gertch. Is that right? Gertch?
Diana
Getch,
Getch.
who has been offering free of charge. You can contribute tips through Venmo, if I understand properly. But she's been offering various writing classes online for free. Is that right, Joy?
Yeah, Aaron, I'm so glad you brought that up. Early on in COVID, so Diana Getch is a wonderful, gifted poet, but also a really gifted teacher. Taught a lot at Iowa, and we've always sort of done some things with Diana. She approached us for what's called a free writing class. She teaches free dash writing, even though, and it was by donation. So free writing is just a way to help writers generate words. It's like keeping your muscles supple, right?
Right. Right. It's
And
yeah. I would describe it as almost like just like running sprints or something. I don't know. Like
yeah,
it's not warming up. It's like you're definitely practicing. But
you're practicing, right? Which is,
yeah.
and she and I have talked about this. Writing. We don't. And Aaron, you touched on this too. That in the inspiration part of writing is few and far between, and often not our best work. It's really this grind, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And how do we keep, and unlike ballet or dance or music, we don't think about this, just regular practice to keep our minds sharp, on this, and that's sort of what Diana's class is. It's just sort of teaching our brains to sort of generate words in this
Yeah, and to open up
way.
to
And open up.
that like as you said, like the grind can make you really closed off if you just
Yeah,
like narrow in on it over a long period of time. Yeah, I even sometimes have to step back totally and
yeah,
not write for like a week or two or maybe even longer.
yes,
And it was the same thing with guitar when I was learning to play guitar. And I was learning to play lead like solos and blues solos. I would get caught in the same like repetitive actions, and then
yeah,
I would step back, and then I would come back, and I would play this immediately, like play this riff where I was like, "Whoa, like where'd that come from?"
yes. Yeah, and it's like
Yeah.
it's a grind without making it a grind, right? So much of a grind
Yeah.
that you want to avoid it. But I mean, maybe we all sort of want to avoid writing in some ways. But um, so her class, she is just like just a really gifted teacher, almost like a Zen-like, I want to say, because the feedback we've gotten from the classes is wonderful, and it really, I think, synced very well in COVID times because people's brains were on overdrive, right?
Right. Right.
And this was a way to sort of kind of ground us as writers and keep us going. Because there was that question in the beginning, like, what matters? Does this even matter anymore? And maybe there's always that question, existential dread that every writer has. But I think even
Yep.
exacerbated by COVID, right?
Yep.
Bodies
Yep.
piling up on trucks, and I'm trying to write a short story.
Well, yeah. Were we talking about that?
We may have been.
I'm having. Yeah.
Yeah, we may have been. So,
Yeah, we were at some point. Yeah, this is like I'm having crazy deja vu, but I think it was like actually me and you
yeah,
talking
yeah.
about this. Yeah.
Yeah, so there's this dread, and this class, she thought, well, let me offer this by donation, and let's see if we can help writers. And, I think that's the most successful things we do is like what can help our community, like what do people need right now, and I think it was born out of that, and she did it weekly on Thursday nights, and I have my kids almost full time, so I honestly wasn't able to participate in it. I don't know, Aaron, if you ever took the class, were you able to take one?
I have not. I have been present, though, for one of Diana's classes when it was held in the Paragraph Cafe, and I was really impressed. It's mostly, as Diana explained it, letting oneself free write is just a matter of allowing oneself as a writer to lower one's standards for a moment.
Yes.
And so
Isn't that the key to happiness? Lower standards?
yes, sorry about that. Allowing oneself to lower one's standards for a moment. That we, as writers, we've read all of this great literature. We aspire to write great literature. And that keeps us from being comfortable just expressing ourselves, just pouring words out on a page. And so she said she encouraged the writers to allow themselves to lower their standards and just write. And then they would get together, they would go into the writing space and write quietly for 10 or 15 minutes and then report back to Diana. And they would read, some of them would read what they'd come up with, and it was remarkable. And more than that, they said, because of this liberating aspect of it, they ended up writing in ways they had never written before. They allowed themselves to sort of break new ground. And so I was very, very impressed with her and with her teaching.
Yes, Aaron, I think you perfectly encapsulated what her weekly class is, and I think she brings something new each week. It's a 20-week. It wound up being a 20-week course. She's winding up the Thursday night one now, and she's added a Wednesday afternoon one, which will go. And yeah, it's been so she's done it for almost 20 weeks now, and she's had, I would say, 50 to 75 people a week attending. Um, Very enthusiastically attending. So the nice thing about Zoom is that we can that can be 50, it can be 500. It's sort of the same class for her, and I think it's really kept people going through a really difficult time.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Yeah, Zoom. I have such ambivalence about Zoom.
Yeah, don't we
I
all?
just, yeah, it's a necessary, and I don't want to say evil, but for me personally, it's like obvious. Evil doesn't encapsulate the feeling I
No,
have. It's just it's not what I prefer.
no,
That's
it's
for
in
sure.
front of us.
Yeah.
I will say, so what I found from doing these online events, craft talks and pitch wars and round tables and Diana's class. Diana does a webinar. It takes a certain skill to sort of look at a screen without people in the room and teach a class in a really personal way that she's able to. I think she has
Hmm.
a
Hmm.
really unique ability to do that, and some teachers do. I mean, I couldn't, know that I'm engaging a room, or not even a room, but a virtual room full of people. Um, but she is able to do that, and she then at the very end will bring students in, and then also she makes it participatory. So as Aaron was saying, people will go and free write, and then they'll come on the screen and or put their audio on and read what they wrote. That's
Yeah.
optional, of course. So she has a way of making it very intimate, and I think that's to her credit. I don't know that all teachers can teach a Zoom webinar and make it that intimate.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, if this is something somewhat personal for me, but I really don't mind sharing it. I think people should share it more, and I think the culture is changing. But anyway, I'm a sober person, and I attend meetings. I'm not like I don't go like every day or anything like that. But since COVID has happened, I've completely stopped. I've gone to a couple over Zoom, and it's just like almost like nothing, and it feels terrible, but in a way, I don't know. I think I feel guilty more than it's actually like really impacting me horribly. But I would like to go, and it's just there's something about Zoom that just takes away a little bit from the community, like the communal spirit. But I don't know. I feel like an asshole because it's like holding things together at the same time,
Well, I completely I hear you, because we have these Zoom events which I love having, and I always have this little hesitation before they start, like a big sigh of like, oh, gotta get on camera, gotta open Zoom.
Yeah.
But then when we do them, it's not sort of as bad as I thought it was going to be. I don't know how to put it, but
Yeah.
there is something gratifying about it. But I'm never expecting that, and it takes a lot of energy to do them. Then again, I think maybe I felt a little bit the same with the live events. Maybe I'm just not like, and maybe I'm just not a center of attention kind of person. But I hear you on
Yeah, and also it's a different medium. I mean, like for example, like I just brought that up, but at the same time when we did the Pitch Wars thing, I had a ton of fun. It was great. I mean, I guess maybe like an AA or an NA meeting is just not as inherently exciting, but I mean it can be, but depending on the day. But yeah, I mean it's I mean in that sense, like there's a lot of when you're trying to share and there's a lot of like stiltedness between passing the mic proverbially and all that stuff. And as I said, like, I don't know for you specifically, like going back to tech acting as a bridge between like to like, connect these moments in time, simply your ability to function on Slack and Zoom. Like it's something you shouldn't take for granted, because I really think it would like if I was in your place, it would be very difficult for me.
Yeah.
And I mean, your ability to kind of use it seamlessly has definitely helped. And because like, for example, that event that I did with you guys was a lot of fun.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
take credit for that. I have good tech support in the background, because that's a whole different skill to be able to host an event and work all the the hand raising and the moving people on and off camera, moving mics on and off. That's a whole different. It's like I can't do all those things simultaneously.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Do you want to, before we sign off, I was wondering if we could talk a little bit about what you guys are working on now. Speaking of writing, this is what we're all trying to support. So I know, Joy, you talked a little. I don't know if you do want to share this, so I'm kind of putting you on the spot, and you can decline.
I'm happy to share, but I want to give it to Aaron first. I feel like I've monopolized a lot of this call.
That's okay. Aaron knows you have the spotlight today. He's the supporting cast.
Thank you, Brian, for asking. I'm at a weird time in my creative work in that I've finished everything. I had a real burst of creative activity during COVID, basically, when I was in California for 3 months, sort of marooned with my mom in her house. And so I got a lot of writing done there, and I translated Baudelaire's Flowers of Evil for W.W. Norton, and I'm done with that now. It's all I worked on for about 4 months, and I'm happy to say, Joy, you'll remember I hired Saul Anton, who's a PhD in French, to trash my translations.
Yeah, anyone named Anton is going to do.
Yes, he's great.
That's like the name. That's like the name of our first like fully sentient AI.
Oh,
I didn't know you
his
were a
answer.
Myron. That's great. I'm really happy to hear that.
Yes, thank you. And so now I need to come up with new stuff, and that's always really scary. And that you worry as a writer
Yep.
when you finish something that you'll never be able to write again. Um,
Yeah. It's almost a terrible
yeah,
moment.
and so you always I say that people ask me if I'm a writer. I say I was a writer, and I hope to be today and tomorrow. That's it, God willing.
Aaron,
I have faith. I have faith in you, Aaron.
I do too, Aaron. Aaron, you wrote through the toughest time when you were in California. I remember, marooned in California. You were so productive. I'm so impressed by that. I think we were all sort of watching terrible Netflix shows and not writing, and you were, just,
I remember it
you know,
feels like another time. There was the Tiger King. Everyone was watching the Tiger King.
The tiger. Yeah, that's
I'll
right.
never get
That's
that
right.
time back of my life.
Yeah, I was trying to
Thank
find
you.
money on the ground.
Joy, yeah. Well,
I
you?
finally
How's your
got
novel
back to
coming
writing
along?
though. So what about you, Joy? Are you willing to share?
Sure. I mean, I'm working on a novel, and unlike Aaron, I have guilt because, I've spent a lot of my time and energy transitioning Paragraph to online, taking care of my kids, dealing with their school, and this summer I'm back to it. And what you guys said before about the grind I was really happy to hear that, because I've been journaling a lot, which kind of helps loosen things up, but the actual book feels like a grind. So
Yeah, yeah.
I'm glad it's supposed to feel like a grind because
Oh yeah.
the bar is pretty low for what's on the page, and now I have to improve it. Um, so I'm both writing and editing, and my hope was to finish it by the end of the summer, at least a good working draft. And I guess the summer is technically not over until September 21st, right? So I have a few more weeks.
A fun fact. There actually technically isn't a. People say it's like the equinox or the solstice, but that's kind of a casual, an unofficial way. There's no technical turn. But anyway, I'm a meteorology nerd. I need to stop. Um, but what about the novel itself? Do you want to talk about a little bit what it's about? Because I thought it was really interesting.
Oh, it's a story of a compulsive gambler, a racetrack gambler, who essentially burns down his life uncontrollably, but or I should say, what's the word? Um, Inevitably. But very very charismatic character, and just sort of from the beginning to the end. Maybe not much change in him, but lots of change and destruction around him. And that's the book. I guess I'm not great at encapsulating it. I'll have to get better so I can.
No, that's great. I'm really curious about that. So if you need a beta reader, I'm always
Yeah.
around.
Oh yeah, we talked about that. The racetrack stuff is most gambling books are about casino gambling is I guess much more glamorous to write about than the racetrack.
Yeah,
The
yeah,
racetrack is pretty
yeah.
lowbrow.
Well, you're the only other person I can think of is Bukowski, and I think women around the world will be happy for you to supplant him. So,
Oh God, if I could supplant him, that's a lofty goal. If I could just finish the book, that would be nice.
yeah, okay, okay.
And what
Well,
about you, Brian?
no pressure.
Can we ask you the same question?
Sure. Yeah, actually, you know what? Now you can, because for a long time I had a lot of trouble, not starting projects, but sticking to projects. Like I'm the kind of person that like I start something and I quickly know if it's something that I should go deeper on. Um, go deeper with, and I was just rotating through all of these attempts, and I finally landed on this one idea. I'm not sure how much I should say about it. Basically it's this guy who, he's not satisfied with his life, to put it very simply. And someone comes into his life who, he lost his mother, a few years ago, and he hates his father. And someone comes into his life who basically can give him exactly how the stock market's going to behave. And so he can basically get rich as long as he can like get the capital together. And you kind of think it's like this corporate thriller, but it turns out to be a little more than it's, or like the twist at the end is like there's kind of like a speculative fiction aspect. about like who this guy is. Ganesh is his name. You think he's just this cosmopolitan like Indian man, but he turns out to be something else. I know that's like a huge tease, and like everyone's like boring, but I really don't want to say anymore because I don't want to give away the twist. You know.
I don't think it's boring. I mean, the choice he has to make is not boring. Is that a novel? Is there?
Yeah, it's a novel. It's basically like, you know, he's the first challenge is going to be running into like the SEC and stuff, and like, you know, they're going to be like, you know, there's no way you can do this. There's no way you can like know exactly what's going to happen. You know, all this stuff, and like for the good majority of the book, it's like this corporate thriller that I envision, and then something is revealed, and then, you know, we'll talk about that later.
So do you outline?
You know what? I do and I don't. I have very loose, like little sketches that I write all over the place. And then I have these notes at the end of like the next section that I've written, you know? I've done one rigid outline for my last novel when I was like in the middle of, when I was kind of like before my last two like drafts, you know? But other than that, I don't really, I don't do like hard outlining. I don't know. What about you?
Well, I call up. So I have no idea what I'm doing. It's my first novel. I wrote lots of pages at a point where I just needed to write pages in no particular order because I just needed them to pile up. Just to feel like it was something. The idea felt like a novel. It still does, but I had no rhyme or reason or structure. I finished a draft of like the first part of it. I read it back and it put me to sleep. So I thought, you know, maybe I should outline and actually not. I think I was right. I knew what the plot was somewhere in my head, but I was just writing around it.
That's a very interesting point. I actually think that outlining should be specifically for plot, especially for people that are very literary minded. And I've made it a goal for myself to make this second novel a lot more accessible. Because the feedback I got from my first novel was like very difficult to read, blah, blah, blah. And I'll always be proud of it. And it's always kind of what I aspire for in fiction. And it very much upsets me that we're not there anymore. And I think it's because of where we are with entertainment and stuff. I just think like you're competing with things that are too passive, and it's just, you can't write like, like Pynchon anymore. And it's really upsetting to me because I really thought I wrote something special. Not to be, I don't know, that's not the most humble thing to say, but
and isn't the goal just to write what we want to write, you know?
And that's the thing. So I really had to sit with myself and say, okay, so what can I do to get to like, you know, because I want to be read as much as I want to write something great. So I had to find some sort of reconciliation. And I really thought about this one. Like it took me a long time, and that's why I tried so many different ideas. And what you just said is so important, I think. Like I'm glad we got here at least at like the end of the podcast, because like in terms of just the writing itself, you know, writing around the plot, I just think is something so common. I think it's so ubiquitous with writers. And I've heard it. I heard my first class ever at Sarah Lawrence was with Melissa Febos, this nonfiction writer. She wrote Whip Smart, which was a memoir about her experience as a dominatrix and an addict. It's really great. But the first thing she said in class was like, you know, people like most stories I read, most pieces I read from like, you know, quote unquote amateurs, people that haven't made it like to where they should be yet, is like, you know, out of a 30-page story, like 28 pages of it will be writing around the thing. And then there'll be one page where they finally get to the point, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think outlining forces you to get to the point. And this question probably should have been for Aaron, who has far more experience. But, you know, for example, there was, you know, early on in the story, one of the main characters gets pregnant at a very young age, unexpectedly. You know, I didn't write that scene, right? I wrote every other scene around it. Like, isn't that so obvious that you need to write that scene? But I think, like you said too, I don't expect my book to ever be like a page turner, because I probably do write a little more quiet and economically. That's a style and a choice. So, but you know, plot, I do think plot is really, really important. Like, you know, to not, you know, I don't want to fall asleep in my own book. So
Yeah. And I'm lucky because I kind of inherently feel that way. And so, I mean, I don't want to call myself lucky. Like, we'll see if I ever get anything else read, but,
Yeah.
but at the same time, like, the way I write is also, if I'm reading a book, I don't personally need plot all the time,
Yes, exactly.
um,
The
it's
sense of
always kind of been language first. So yeah, that's why it was really, it was a moment of reckoning for me, for sure. I mean, we're about at an hour. I could close it up. Is there anything else you wanted to touch on?
No, I'm so grateful for this. Thank you for giving me the time to talk about paragraph and the focus, and I'm glad we're able to redo it. And as always, I really love our conversation. So I'm just very happy to connect.
Yeah, thank you for coming on, and thank you, Aaron. Even though you're out in the abyss, we'll attach it. We should put the cover photo for this episode as the
Absolutely.
video I just took. Okay, that's it for today's episode. If you like what you heard, please subscribe and review on whichever platform you're listening. You can get in touch with us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Animal Riot Press. That's at Animal Riot Press, or through our website, animalriotpress.com. This has been the 22nd episode, a rehash of the 22nd episode of the Animal Riot podcast with your host, Brian Birnbaum, and featuring Joy Parisi and Aaron Puchigian. Transcripts for our deaf and hard of hearing animals are provided by Jonathan Kay, and we're produced by Katie Rainey. See you later, you filthy animals.
Yes, sir, it's the burn. Bombing on y'all and getting gully as the fern. I don't know much about Lee.